Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this exciting look at how to boost your business using custom infographics. This is a continuation of our previous webinar, Power Tools for Commercial Real Estate Professionals, and we're happy to have you with us today. As you're all aware, technology has completely revolutionized business today, and this is most evident in the amount of information that's out there in the marketplace. We now have access to vast amounts of information about markets, sites, and consumers, all the way down to the individuals in some cases. And what this has done, it's changed the perceptions of our stakeholders and investors. They now want more information, and the right information, more than they've ever wanted before. And it can be difficult to overcome this glut of data to find out what it is they're really asking for. Our stakeholders have vastly different preferences for every site and for every deal. So how can we overcome this? What we found is that those who are unable to overcome this data and quickly and effectively share information with their stakeholders will lose out to the competition, those that can. Well, I believe that what commercial real estate professionals need is an intuitive tool to help bring sites to life. So over the next hour as we're presenting, I want you to reflect on how you currently share information with your stakeholders. And think about how much time and the resources go into these reports and binders. By sharing practical insights quicker and more effectively than your competition, you're going to be in a better position to grow and be profitable. But to get started, some of you may not be aware, what is an infographic? And infographics are quick snapshots of a site or a market that take various data variables that you think are valuable or are relevant to your stakeholder and present them in one place. That way you can present these aesthetically pleasing presentation tools to your clients, and they're able to look through, see how a site relates to the area around it. As you can see from one of our examples here on the top right, looking at the drive time of a site, what is the trade area based on where consumers can get to it? What is the educational attainment in a certain area? What do people make? What do people care about in these areas? And as we go through the demo today, think about the various elements that go into infographics. You can inlay maps. You can have charts, statistics. And what's nice is you can actually brand Esri Infographics for your company or your stakeholders. If you're working with an established brand or franchise, being able to integrate their colors, their logos, and the variables that they care about to present a site much faster than a cumbersome report. The data infographics can be structured to tell a story. Do you want to present facts in a highly structured way? Is there a hierarchy? What are the most important variables versus other considerations that your stakeholders may not have considered but you believe are valuable? Overall, what we'd like you to do is spend less time generating reports and more times working with clients, presenting relevant data to them. So today I'm joined with Helen Thompson, who is the manager for the commercial real estate banking and insurance teams here at Esri. Helen has over 20 years experience in spatial statistics and has worked at Esri for over 15 years. She's highly invested in commercial real estate and is a regular speaker at academic and professional conferences, as well as an instructor for various courses within the CCIM Institute. So with that, Helen, I'd like to turn things over to you to discuss the best practices for generating custom infographics.
Well, thanks, Alex. And before I dive into the software, I just thought emphasize some of the things for what I like in infographics. As Alex mentioned, limit the scope of what you're trying to talk about. If you're involved in, let's say, multifamily or retail, really think about what are those facts that you want to show and talk about, and think about the colors. It's not just the brand and design, say, for the partner or customer you're doing the work for, but how does the whole thing come together in a pleasing and aesthetic way? But then when you've got the facts and information, display it within context, right? So emphasize the key relationships. What did you find? What did you understand? In this infographic, really emphasizing the connection between all the different countries of Africa. What were the lowest? What were the highest? How does Africa appear as a continent compared with the whole of, developed nations or developing nations like India, the US, China, etc.? And one of the big things is to keep it simple. And at Esri, we've done a lot of work to try and do that. So Alex, let's get started with showing everybody what we can do with infographics. So here I have a custom or an Esri infographic that brought up, and many of you might not have seen how to create and generate one of these. These are standard things which appear all the way through using our software. Let me just move this out of the way. And when you start off with a site, you'll notice that for the pop-up there's reports, and you just click on this icon here to generate infographics. There's a panel at the top left which tells you which infographics are available to you. There's shared infographics which are created within your organization. These are some that we've created in the Esri business team. There are standard Esri infographics, and I'm using the key facts one, but there are many, many which are currently available. Things like a property portfolio flyer, which includes photographs and other charts and tables, which are all linked. And so for this site, Citrus Avenue in Redlands, we've gone out in the field and collected a photograph of it. If there are other photographs, we can dynamically link them inside this custom infographic. And other information like the address, the name, the frontage, you can see the current sales price, other information which have been collected as attributes for that site when I set up my project have been captured and presented with it. And then we've got some key other things being presented. Key facts, these are, as Alex mentioned, progressive, so I can click on some of these. I can change them between a chart and a table. I can index them to see which are the most important. Household income, daytime population, and here another chart which focuses on key spending information. And these dynamically change as I go between the different distances, so 5, 10, and 15 minutes, and I can quickly summarize information about it. So if you look at household income, 52,000 within 5 minutes, that increases to 66,000 within 10 minutes, and then it falls again to 49,000. So we're able to summarize all of this information. We can display this data as a table in exactly the same way, and I can control all of these different fonts. And you'll notice that the colors of the maps inside the infographics also reflect the colors of the charts. So what I want to do is I want to start tailoring some of these different graphics and making these my own. So what I'm going to do now is just going to click on Infographics, have a little exploration of some of the key things I want. I kind of like this household by income element. I'm pretty good with educational attainment. I can jump through any of these other information, things like transportation to work. So Esri's collected key facts in these existing infographic templates. But I also want to emphasize two things. These are what we call infographic panels. So a title with a bunch of icons or an infographic panel. We've got description and text boxes. We've got images. We've got these different charts. And any of these individual elements, I'm able to grab and copy between these different templates as I build my own. So using reports and build infographics, I can start to make my own. And I can start off, say, picking up one of these templates. Let's go back and start using key facts here. And I'm going to start editing it. So let's replace the educational attainment panel with something else. So clicking on Add Panel from another template allows me to go and get things that I might want which have been in another area. So let's say I'm interested in healthcare facts, and I'm going to add now the access to healthcare. And what you'll notice is that the colors have changed, even though in that original infographics they had different colors associated with them. So I'll do this again so you can see. I'm going to click inside here, and this time I'm going to grab the panel, and we'll say no healthcare insurance. Oh, let's actually just add this one, which doesn't have a title, and you'll see that it's changed. And the reason for that is that these colors are controlled with our theme settings. So Esri's created a number of different themes. You can click on them for the background color, the icon, the highlight. So if I want to change all of the icons, say, to blue, I can click on the highlight color and change that. I can do a lot of different things in terms of highlighting this. I can create my own themes. So I have a green theme that I've created by customizing these different colors, and that will be applied all the way across my template. I'm going to cancel out of making some of these changes and look at some other parts that I can add. One of the great things that we can do is move panels around. So you can drag and drop panels. So if I want these to be in different places, drag and drop, and now they'll replace them. I can use the bars to resize some of these. So I might want to, move this panel over here and take this panel and say just get rid of it. And now I can merge these two different elements together. So each one of these little boxes are what we call an element. And that's really important to understand, because you're going to start, and I'm going to show you how to build your own panels. At any time, you can add another row of elements. So I just click on the plus or click on the minus, and it will be automatically rescaled to support that. Using the little paper icon, I can also see how big these are, and I can also set my margins. So we can have it in portrait or landscape mode. We can automatically adjust the sizes, and all of our infographics assume that everything is built with 96 dots per inch. So there's a great number of configuration and customization options within this interface. So very quickly you can start to create things, move things around, copy from work that's already been done, and try to make your life as easy as possible. So I've added the transportation one. I'm going to resize it a little bit. I can now, if I don't like this infographic, I can split this element back up, resize it, do all these different things, and I'm going to just save it as a temporary map or a template, and this will now take the Esri default templates and allow me to save it in my area. So now I've got a copy of this that I can start working with. So now here it is amongst all of the different templates that I've created. And the great thing is that these become part of your library. So you can see Esri templates, the blank templates which have been created with all these different elements. These are essentially design frameworks that I'll come back and use later. And other shared templates that people within the team has created, including specific designs for clients and customers. So if I go back to my template, one of the things that I might want to do is fill in those blanks. In this case, what I'm going to do is not go to the Esri templates, but go to templates that I've created. So I'm going to look inside here, and now all of the work that I've done, I can start copying and pasting from these different panels. So I have one here where I'm looking at employment characteristics, so employees by industry, and I can just grab this and it's automatically put it inside, and you'll see that this was designed with white text. So there's a couple of ways that I can fix that. I can change the background color if I'd like to another color and apply that design. So now it's all applied. So the green doesn't look very good, right? So one of the things to do is to think about the library of colors, because you might have elements which are individually designed, but using these templates, it's very quick and easy to make some of these changes. So I could apply new colors to these different parts of the infographic, and I'm specifically and deliberately making this very luminous and not very pretty. At any time when you customize this, we can also add sort of background images, and I'm going to show how to do more with that a little later. But you can see that very quickly we can start to build things up working across these different elements. You can also undo the work, so step back through these different changes. So here I've undone the color changes, I've undone the different parts of adding these different elements, and I can also just abandon the work entirely just by clicking cancel. All right, some of the other things which are really important about this is that you can bring together and use some key elements within the framework. So there are key variables and names that we use. So there's things like the site description, the site address, and they are tags or variables which are always addressable. So in this case, I've created something that uses the site description and the site address. And what I'm going to do, if I click save, you can we'll see the template that it's part of. And what I often recommend people to do is give it a logical name, right? We can also see information about it. So use this information to look at the date of vintage, the author, other things associated with it, because you can find this later. So you can add specific tags. So I'm going to use my hit cancel, go back to my maps, and this one's called side banners. So what it will do is it will generate that one, it will be in my list. Here it is, the side banners. I can click on that, and now it will change to this custom infographic. And here it is using that site name and site description associated with it, which are automatically populated. And you might have seen when I created this, as I jump around, the information will change. So it's just populating these variables which have names in the system. So let's go and make some changes to this infographic. Okay, so each one of these are little components, panels inside the interface. And I can replace them using the infographic panels with lots of things that I might want. Delete them, edit them. If I made a mistake here on setting this up, I can just hit undo. I can go back in and edit this one, and in this case all of the text is white, but I can click on this, see what it might be and what it says. There are these key pigeonhole slots, cells in the Excel language called elements. They're the fixed building blocks of how we create infographics, and they're really the containers to hold them. They have a minimum size in pixels, 200 by 150 pixels, But as I said, everything is scaled up along this different size. And then the template itself is really a table which contains those different elements. And I really tend to think it as a structured whiteboard. And there are templates from Esri. You can define them yourselves, and organizational templates. If we think about this a little further, you saw me using infographic panels themselves. There are different charts, tables, images, and text. And we can also customize and use different maps. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go in and start to customize some of these individual infographics and build my own. Okay, so just canceling out of this, going back to our area, I'm going to start using a blank infographic. And I can use the plus button to come and create this. And here we are at this level, and I can resize this down to 200 by 150 pixels, which is the one that I prefer. I want to create a graphic which in the end is going to end up with 1200 pixels wide and 750 pixels tall. So what that means is I need basically a 6 by 5. So I start on this, I click next, I've got a 5 by 5, I need to click plus, and now here is the elements that I want for my basic infographic design. And I'm good with that, and I can, save this now as a template that I can come back to again and again. But I've already done that for myself, and I've labeled and created my blank templates with names which are logical. So my 6 by 5, 200 by 150 pixel template, I can just now open and start using it. And you can see that each one of these represents the infographic elements that I can use. I can go back to this little paper icon, and I normally build my infographics without any margins and borders in them. So I'll set all of these values to 0. It also automatically scales this, and so I can set them to any size in terms of the page size. So you can create your own custom sizes. And then within this, I can start to build a design. And one of the real tips is to be able to go in and create your own background images and design around this. So when I'm drawing and creating infographics, one of the things that I do is I start off with a design file. I start off with something that I'm going to use to really lay out this design. And I've created some designs here, and this is one that I want to use for my infographic. And it's a blank design, and I'm going to change the background color to our default theme. All right, and now you can see that this is part of one of my hexagon designs. And what I've done is I've set up that I'm going to have a chart. Here I'm going to have a map. I'm going to have some table, another chart down here, and some individual elements. And what I would do is I'd start to move and reorganize this to match the different chalk lines, if you want, that I've got in my thematic design. So you can see that I can start to merge elements, and then in the background, these lines tell me how I need to resize the individual objects. So by grouping things together, I can resize them, I can move them, I can do different things. So these are guidelines for me and my design. So I don't want to spend the time in this webinar sort of building all of this from scratch. So I've actually created one of these before, which I'm just going to open. So here it is done in exactly the same way. And you can see that what I've done is I've joined all the different rows and together by combining all these different columns. and I can, now you'll see that there's 3 individual cells here. I can quickly click merge. Now I can start to move these different objects up until I reach my, my guidelines. So thinking about these designs, one of the key ideas is to try to keep it simple, to think about designing your raw infographic sizes in which they're sort of reflective. So I have essentially chopped this into quarters. If you imagine this line being displayed slightly over here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 major parts to this. It's very simple to think about these now being individual cells because I'll split this up. You can see these individual cells. Now if I split this, I can quickly merge these different components together. And now when I merge across here, I've now created a big block in which I can put a chart or a table. And similarly, I can go through and split and merge and create these different elements, resize them. So I would really encourage you all to sit down and think about how you can use a background image as a framework for what you want to do, and grids and guidelines to really start to design your maps and your infographics. There are some great things which are not very much well known, so let's add a map as part of this. So there's a lot of default maps that Esri has. For example, the dark grey canvas. I'm going to add that, and you know, I'm going to merge these different things together. And I'm now going to go and add from another template. And let's go grab from the property flyer, and let's grab all of the site information and save this as a, you know, a working template. And rather than my template name, I'm going to call it custom template for property flyer. Okay, let's save this, and now that will be added into my library. I go back to maps. It's told us that it's there. I click on infographics, and what I need to do is I need to set my infographic to be the one I just created. I'm just going to hit default, and now every time I come in to that site, it will provide me with this information. So you can see this has been all created, and all the other information that's in the background is actually coming from that guideline template, right? So I can now swap this for another set of information, and here is my map that's inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have this workflow of constantly going backwards and forwards from the map and seeing the things that I want to add. So I'm going to quickly split these back up and do some quick splits and merges to, you know, really sort of design some of the objects that I'm interested in. So now merge across here, and now I've got a big block again which I can do different things in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the map up into here, and you can see it's automatically merged there. And for this one, I'm going to add a table. Now I'm going to show you how to build a blank table. I can do that, but what I probably want to do down here is actually add a chart instead. And so all of the Esri demographic variables, over 15,000, nearly 17,000 worldwide, you can use. And you can use also the information which is in your map. So I'm going to look at spending here, and I'm just going to quickly grab some different spending variables. So I'm interested in the average spend in this area of apparel. And I'm also interested in, for example, spending on transportation. So let's take the average again, drag this on to the map, and you can see it's starting to add this other information. I might say, well, how much do people spend on different things, entertainment and recreation? So when you're building charts, you'll see all the time the background image that I'm using as part of that. So I'm just going to, for the moment, I'm going to turn this off because I really don't want it in the background while I'm designing this thing. I've used it to set my reference. Now what I can do for this individual chart is maybe change some things associated with it. I can change its type, right? It might work nicely as a donut chart in which I can see all the sizes. It really does work as a vertical bar chart, and I can see the elements which are inside. I can change the colors for this quickly. You can also, if you know the hex codes, you can type in hex codes directly inside here. And there's a slightly off-gray color that I just added. You can show them as absolute numbers. You can change the values inside here, whatever you might want to do. And you can get into more and more detail. So add a title, let's say expenditure, and start really getting into individual things with, say, the horizontal axis. Put a title inside, how it's occurred, add grid lines in either direction, and produce a legend. So we could, if you want to color code individual parts of this, then we can do that to the chart very quickly and easily. All of this stuff we can add in terms of just things like data levels. If I want to show them on top or label them inside, all these different things we can add as part of that. So very quickly and easily be able to customize this and put it inside your chart or inside your template. So I'm going to, as I said, keep stepping through, looking at this, seeing how all these different things come together and get sort of reference into a custom infographic. So jumping back into my maps, click on Infographics, I will be able to see them again. This is my default. How do things work as I fit the different pages? And you can see now all of the different elements are drawn. As I jump width, or let's just fit to the page to see them. Things look really nice as I scale, and things really start to pop out as I tell my story. But maybe I want a completely different map in here. I can now start editing this to use maps that I've created in ArcGIS Online. And one of the maps that I've been working on in some of the work you might have seen on LinkedIn is around Amazon HQ2 and on transit access. So I've got a really nice map of transit access which I've created from ArcGIS Online. And I really want to add that as a background into my chart. So not just a base map, but actually something which is completely custom for my story. So I log into ArcGIS Online, and I can go and start looking for that map. And so, if you have things that you're, talking about, it might be parcel boundaries, it might be the curb cutting, it might be population or income, whatever those are, you can just now add straight from ArcGIS Online a map in the background. I'm going to click Save, say OK that I want to override this one, and now I'm going to jump back out to maps, and we will now be able to see for my new infographic, not the map which actually displayed in Business Analyst, but actually my custom transit map inside my view. And this is completely interactive, as you can see. So this really emphasizes the power and the linkages between Business Analyst and ArcGIS Online and all the data and information that's there. And I can go in further to customize this with, say, photographs and charts and many, many different things. And I want to show you, a sort of an end product. So this infographic is based on that same quick facts design. So you can see that here is the chart that I've looked at. I've changed all of the colors. I've created another chart which is a ring chart for the age profile, and I've brought together a whole bunch of quick facts into these little cells. And the way that it's organized is, in the background is an image that I'm using as the sort of the framework to display all of these different things. And all of you will get access to my different backgrounds. There's more than 100 of them that I've created in this library of backgrounds. So everything from hexagons to what we call periodic table, these side-by-side banners, a whole range of different versions of this. And you can see that what I do is I automatically label and name them on the different sizes. So this hex summary is the one that I want to use, and it's now fits over in the background. And because my infographic panel itself, the infographic template, is different to that background image, I will need to adjust the size of my infographic to accommodate it. And I can do it here. So one of the things that you can do is you can play around with the widths in terms of knowing what are the different sizes. So if you apply this, you can see that it starts to stretch this. The graphics themselves can be scaled. So think about the design of the background images and how you're going to use this before you start creating these different infographics and these different objects, right? Because the backgrounds themselves are tied in to your actual profiles. Okay, so I'm going to jump out of this, and in the last 4 minutes, I'm going to show you some of the other kind of capabilities which are in there, and some that I've created. So using the same sort of ideas about these cells and these background images, this is what I call the periodic table. So I've grouped thematically all of these different data elements together. So population, household, and household size all fit as a simple little set of cells. I can take any of these individual cells and go and edit them or replace them. So I'm going to click Edit, and what you'll see is this is just an icon, the value for that icon, and the title for it. And if I click back, you'll see that this one comes from the female population inside. So I've created my own little library of objects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace that using an infographic panel, and I'm going to create a new one and do exactly what we just looked at. So this time use 27 population, click Next. Here it is with my background. I can put a title on here, or I can choose to delete it. I'm going to choose a standard shape. So we've got a lot of standard shapes for you to select. So maybe this is one I want to use for population. Here it is with the different elements and colors. So I can change, say, the text color to white. I can change the font, all these different elements associated with it. And I can move, say, the label where it says population. And you'll see we've got ... here. And the reason for that is that I've enlarged the text, but the box it fits in is too small. So I've got to resize that box. I'm going to say, OK, here's my template. Now I'm going to call it Pop 2 or Pop 1. Let's call it Pop 1. And now that will actually be saved into my library. And if we look all the way through, there's different objects that I've created, lots and lots of different things. The background which is now being shown is because this is the background which is applied to all of my template. So now I've replaced this with population 1, but you'll see that the icon and the text are slightly off. So now what I can do is I can edit inside this individual frame. Now this isn't changing that panel, it's just changing my use of it in this template. So I'm going to change the fill color, and I'm going to move this slightly, move the text, and let's just say save now. And you can see that it's moved them just within that individual element. So sometimes they might not fit, and you'll need to move things around. And coming in the next release of Business Analyst at the end of the year is we're bringing Microsoft Office type capabilities to allow you to edit and move and group and align all of these different objects inside. So now I've added my own panel within this, and even if you have your own custom icons, if you don't like Ezra's, then you can change the shape. You can browse for your own. And as an added bonus for today, I'm happy to provide everybody with some of the icons that I've built as PNGs and also as scalable vector graphics. The benefits of SVGs are that they will automatically scale. So I'm just going to inappropriately use the grocery icon here, and it's this little shopping basket, and I can put that as part of this graphic, and there it is. It fits inside beautifully. And because I've made some changes to it, I might want to change this this panel and give it a new name. So with that, I'm just going to click cancel, and I'm going to hand it back over to Alex because I know we've got a few questions.
So Helen, to get started, you generated quite a few infographics, mostly in landscape. So can you discuss the options for doing portrait style?
Yeah, you can absolutely do it in landscape or portrait mode. The reason that I'm just showing most of them in portrait mode is that generally the use of infographics are on screen, and a lot of people that use infographics are just using them, on screen to generate sort of key facts and information. But there's no reason why you can't use portrait mode, and in fact, I might show some of those if you want to.
And wonderful. While if you are able to get that going on your end, we do have another question in regards to the data and the accessibility. So within ArcGIS Online and Business Analyst, our users have access to over 14,000 curated data variables. Can you discuss some of the ones that come from partnerships with state, local, and national governments, in particular traffic counts, and how people are able to see what year those traffic counts were attained?
Yeah, so we use Calibre for traffic counts which is one of the best and sort of most reliable source of traffic count data. But all of that data is also available through ArcGIS Online. So many times people want to use their own Department of Transport data or local authority data that's been generated, and you can bring all of that data in exactly the same way that I did with that transit map. And I'm happy to show that type of capability as well.
Oh yes, I agree. Just last week I was running through a workflow with one of our users on this very thing. Bringing in the data for the traffic counts will show the year that it was collected.
And also within Business Analyst itself, there's a new traffic count widget that allows you to select and manage those traffic counts. So you can filter by year, you can filter by type. It's a great little tool which is available for you, and that can propagate into infographics using the data which is in ArcGIS Online.
Wonderful, and I see quite a few questions about your templates and your designs, so those will be included in the email that will come out within the next 10 days. So we'll send out the 2 webinar viewing links, this webinar and our previous one, plus we'll have a link to download Helen's templates as well as these slides. So we have extra slides in the deck that give the walkthroughs and tutorials that Helen demonstrated. Those will all be included in the follow-up email. Helen, within color mode, are you limited to the hex, or are you also able to do RGB?
We use hex and encourage people to use WebSafe as part of that for a couple of reasons. One, many organizations want to make sure that what appears on screen is sort of consistent, but there are many tools to convert, and if you're as old as me, you could probably remember the RGB in your head. So 25500 for red.
And there are various online resources too for doing color blending, color mixing, looking for the right aesthetic balance. If you know one color that you'd like to work with, where you enter in the RGB or hex, and it will blend a whole palette of complementary colors for you, and then you can put them into the infographics. Within the infographics, Helen, you can add your own data, correct, from hyperlinks or other ArcGIS data sources?
Yeah, if you want to swap me back up, I'll show some of that. Yeah.
Wonderful.
All right. So I'll cover a couple of questions. So one of the questions about portrait versus landscape. This is actually a portrait. The periodic table is a portrait-focused infographic, and you can see, how sort of set this up in terms of the different ways that we want to use it. I'm just going to navigate away from this. Quite a lot of these are actually designed as portrait. This is one that we call mid-century modern, and it's a big poster size infographic, and it comes out to sort of A0 for Europeans, or I think that's D size for the US. So it's a big portrait one with all these sort of different designs inside it. One of the things that we can do, if I go back to my maps and I jump between the different projects, is that you can use different data sources from anywhere to sort of start to bring this stuff together. You can jump around the different projects. If you're working in different geographies, if you're working in Canada, for example, then your infographics are stored in your Canada project. So one of the things that I did was create some data for Denver, and this is all office information. So these are custom boundaries which have been created in business in ArcGIS Online, and I've just loaded this map into Business Analyst. All right, it's just a standard web map with a link, and you can see these different data variables which are inside. And what I've done is then use the web map data itself to build a custom infographic, and it's part of my office demand chart. And so using all of that custom information which is in that data set, I can create a beautiful infographic like this associated with this. And I've created other versions of this using the same sort of data and using background designs and things like this. So here's another one in which this these different elements are just put together on these pillows, if you want, using a background infographic. And how you do that, there's a couple of ways to set this up. You can bring in a map, and it's automatically associated with it. So all the data that's inside this map you can see in this pop-up. I can bring in. So I'm going to come back to Infographics itself. I'm going to make my office market my default, and I'm going to click Edit to edit it. And you'll very quickly get used to this workflow. And if we look at this object here, I'm going to edit it, and it's hard for you to see in this mode, but I've got a bunch of sort of information associated with this, and I'm going to click Edit. I can find the information that's associated with it and change all the parameters. But you can see up here in my variables that this is total buildings, total number of offices, average building size. If I click back, this is coming from my map itself. So if we look at the categories, one of the things that we have is my data, and within my data I'm using the individual attributes within that map itself. So the total number of buildings, the total number of offices, and the average building size. So they're the elements which are being created, and those are going into this custom infographic. And I'm going to quickly just resize it, reshape it. I'm going to click Save, and you can see now that it's been, reorientated, associated with those changes that I've made. Okay, so yeah, we can absolutely use data from many, many different sources, many, many different data sets. And if you want to use other maps and charts and put them in the background in exactly the same way, you can navigate through ArcGIS Online. So I'm just going to start to browse this, and I can bring these different maps in that I've created or somebody else has created. So this is my transit access map. I can add it to the end, or I can replace it. So I'm just going to say replace now, and this is transit access sort of all over the world, and this is just a picture, right, which sort of fits in the background, so I can control how this is displayed. And now when I start looking at my Redlands area, my Citrus Plaza area in my infographics, if if it's using the default map, it will update the infographic to use that information. So you can see in here, I'm not using any maps at all, but it's completely possible to bring anything in that you're interested in, and use the background maps or the Esri default. So in this example, again, I don't have a map, but I have multiple pages. And I just wanted to come back to the question of sizing. And one of the things you can do is very quickly resize and repurpose this. But they're also designed to print, so you can print in landscape or portrait mode. You can see the custom sizes that have been set up and the standard sizes. So you can print these infographics in different ways, and they'll automatically scale, add a header and a footer. You can export these as PDFs in exactly the same way. But what I really like is custom dynamic HTML, and that will actually generate objects for you. Hand it back to you, Alex.
Excellent. Thank you, Helen. We do have a question here regarding compatibility with different operating systems. Yes, everything you've seen here today is a online service, so it is compatible with Mac. So you don't have to worry about your operating system. You can access web browsers. You're able to access Esri's online solutions, Business Analyst, ArcGIS Online, and you can create these and other web applications as well. See. Now, Helen, when it comes to displaying historical trends over time, what would you think would be the best practice of going through that?
So some of the things that I've done is build my own custom graphics outside of Business Analyst and ArcGIS Online, and using design tools or graphics packages or even PowerPoints, and then saving them maybe as screenshots or JPEGs or other images, and then using the image option within the infographic to tie them together. So one of the great things associated with a site is that you can bring together all of these different characteristics. So I want to come back to something that, again, isn't well known. I'm going to create a new project. Project's a way of organizing data, and I'm going to call this one webinar. And you see this option for create custom attribute fields. And this is where we can add information, and I might want to put together some of this information that's changed over time. So let's just call change whatever it might be. These are I'll call this one let's call this change 1, right? So I can capture all these different graphics and other attributes about an object, and we'll call this change 1 and 2, right, and apply these. And so every time now I create an object inside a site inside this project, what it's going to be doing is asking me, where appropriate, allowing me to add those extra attributes. And as I create a site, one of the great things about it is I can add and append different information. So a site can have photographs and charts and things like that. So what I often do is I create a graphic and associate it with one of these sites, and I use that as part of my infographic. So now in here, if I created a new location, I can just drag add a pin or whatever way it might be. Made in New York. While I'm doing this, Alex, are there any other questions?
Let me look real quick. The last ones we did see were about historic trends. We do have one question about the ability to look at and visualize employers within different areas. Cartographically, yes, there are ways to display, if you have the data of an employer, via polygons or other proportional symbols, the size of that employer compared to others. In terms of access to the employer's data itself, Helen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not believe we have access to individual employers' data.
No, we don't.
But what we do have is daytime population in certain areas. So you can compare daytime population versus nighttime population to show down to the block group where there are changes, where there are more people during the day versus at night. Then you can interpolate where there are larger numbers of employees.
Yeah, and we also do have employees by NAICS and SIC code, so you can group, say, information technology workers versus retail versus, finance. All of those are available. And you can see here now sort of adding, this is the Redlands Esri offices, and if I look at the details associated with it, you can see the information that I've added in terms of these different key attributes.
Well, excellent. Thank you very much, Helen. And with that, there does not appear to be any additional questions. However, if you think of something and you would like to ask us, you feel free to email us direct. You can reply to the confirmation email you received from GoToWebinar when you registered. That will get you in touch with me directly, and I can get your question to the appropriate parties. I'd like to thank all of you again for registering and joining us today. Again, we will be sending out an email within the next 10 business days with all the resources you need to get you started. If you did select to be contacted, we will have our implementation team reach out to you as soon as possible. Thank you very much, everyone. And Helen, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.